Hello, everyone. My name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 3, Episode 7.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. So, folks, yesterday I watched an episode of a podcast titled Low Value Mail. It's hosted by comedian Danny Polachek, and he had a guest on named Joe Roop. And Joe is host of the podcast Lighting the Void. Now, Joe was very influential to me when I first started my journey back in January of 2022. When I first started listening to the Gateway Experience tapes and applying what I had learned there to my spiritual practices. The interesting thing with Joe is that he was one of the few people that I had found online who actually listened to the Gateway Experience tapes. Not only did he listen to them, but he experienced them. He was able to clearly communicate with his audience about his experiences with out-of-body experiences and hypnosis. It was really interesting to listen to. It was a great way to kind of understand that there were other people out there who were actually doing it and not just talking about it. I found countless podcasts and YouTube channels where people would talk about the Gateway Experience tapes, but they never actually listened to them. They would only talk about the conspiracy and the lore that was surrounding the tapes, right? So one of the things that Joe talked about on Low Value Mail yesterday were some of the things that he had discussed throughout his own podcast that I had really, taken an interest in. And not only was it his work with the Gateway Experience tapes, but Joe was also a member of the Freemasons, right? And now that really caught my attention. And I've said this in past episodes and in other forms of media that I've put out. I am not a member of any secret society. I never have been, and I don't think I ever will be, right? So I just wanted to clarify that with people, because one of the things that we're doing here is I think we are uncovering some of those mysteries that they keep within those secret societies. And what was interesting listening to Joe is that he didn't stay in the Freemasons for long. Because what he did is through his actual experiences and the things that he was researching on his own, he was unlocking the mysteries faster than they were, giving him or teaching him in Freemasonry. And he also, like so many other people that I heard, they all say, listen, these guys don't know anything about what we're talking about. They don't know anything about hypnosis, out-of-body experience, astral travel, and how all of that plays into manifestation and spirituality. They really just had no clue. For them, it was more just a business opportunity. So it was really great to hear from guys like Joe and so many others who really taught me that You don't have to be a member of a secret society to learn these things. You can learn them on your own. And Joe wasn't the only person that taught me that. There were so many other people very close to me in my life who taught me that in their own way. So, and back to the episode yesterday of low value male, right? So Joe was on there. It was 2 hours long. The first hour, they really focused on the tapes and kind of what Joe's experiences are and his time within the Freemasonry, right? The second half of the show, the second hour, they did take calls from the audience. Went a little off the rails. I thought it was great. I loved it. It was hilarious. A lot of really fun content. But just understand that, right? And so one of the things that Joe talked about is that one way to describe what happens in locale 2, right? We talked about locale 2 before, that dreamlike state. He called it lucid dreaming. And I thought that's such a great way to describe it, right? A lot of us have heard about lucid dreaming before. And again, it's just being conscious while you're dreaming, being able to control yourself in your dreamlike state. So I thought that was such a great way to describe it. And what is nice when you listen to Joe is he doesn't go overboard. He was limited in his exposure to the tapes, limited with his experiences in a way, and he's very honest about that, right? And that's one of the things that's been so interesting. The other folks that I've been listening to, like in the last episode, we talked about the YouTube channel called The Gateway Experience. A young man, has a great name for his channel. He's talking about what he's doing through his experiences with the tapes. And he's been very open about saying, hey, if I listen to the tape and nothing happens, that's what I'm going to tell you. And we talked about that a little bit in the last episode. And that's what was nice with Joe, too. He wasn't telling us any fanciful stories, making things up, making experiences that never happened, right? So I wanted to bring that up because, we have to remind ourselves we're not alone in this. We are all doing this together, and there are other people out there doing this in parallel with us, right? This is the interesting part. Again, like we talked about in season 2, the 1st Earth Battalion, there's little groups of people all around the country, all around the world who are doing what we're doing now, right? They're listening to the Gateway Experience tapes. They're learning hypnosis. They're learning out-of-body experience and astral travel and how to use those tools to heal the mind, body, and spirit, to manifest amazing things in your life, right? And, I wanted to bring that up because, again, go out and listen to that episode again. The podcast is called Low Value Male, hosted by Danny Polachek, and his guest was Joe Roop, host of Lighting the Void, right? So, make sure you go and check that episode out. And then also just remember, there are so many of us out here. We're working all on this together. So, folks, we have made it to wave 2. Okay, so that's something to be excited about. We made it all the way through wave 1. We're on episode 7 now. And before we get back into the book and before we get into starting wave 2, let's just do a quick review, okay? So in wave 1, discovery, tape 1, introduction, Dr. Monroe introduces us to the Gateway Experience and basically teaches us what the preparatory process is, okay? The preparatory process, as we know, these are the steps that we're going to take every single time we listen to a tape. These are the skills that we learn that get us into a state of being to where we can then go do the second half of the tape, right? Things like your energy conversion box. That's our first step. Again, we're laying there, our eyes are closed, our headphones are on, we're in the darkness, we're seeing the darkness in our eyes, And we're picturing a box in front of us, our energy conversion box. We put all of our worries, our concerns, our whatever issues that we're having, we imagine that we are placing them in the box, and then we're putting a lid on the box, and we're turning our back on it and walking away. The reason that we do this is multifold, but first, it's because if we don't take those issues and stresses of our lives and set them aside, while we go through the rest of the tapes, if we're just sitting there constantly thinking about it over and over again, it's going to distract us, and it's going to keep us grounded in our physical body, and then we're not going to be able to actually experience the tapes. It's a distraction, right? But later on, we actually learn that we can deal with those issues, right? So in tape 2, Focus 10, we are introduced to Focus 10, which is really the very basics of hypnosis, right? The same way you see people being hypnotized on television in the movies, where say a hypnotist counts from 1 to 10, and by the time you reach 10, you're in a deep relaxed state, and now you can talk about things in your past or whatever might be going on, right? We've seen those scenes in movies before. In tape 3, Advanced Focus 10, Dr. Monroe adds another part to our preparatory process. So again, we have the energy conversion box. Then we have resonant tuning. That's that humming where we're visualizing ourselves kind of in a cave surrounded by other people. We can hear them all humming in unison, doing that Om technique of, anybody who's done meditation, you understand what that is. And that's really just getting our entire body to start participating in the tape, right? We're taking deep breaths, long exhales, we're holding our breaths, and it's getting that vibration that we need, that tuning, right? And so the next step that we learn in tape 3 is our resonant energy balloon, right? So now we are picturing ourselves as we breathe in, we're breathing in bright, white, clean energy through our feet. And as we go through the advanced stages, we learn that energy, we swirl it as it's going up through our chakras, right? Again, now we're talking about more of that meditation stuff, things like yoga and more Eastern traditions where we learn about the chakras. And we visualize each of our chakras being recharged and relit with fresh, clean energy as we breathe in this energy through our feet into our head. We hold that energy in our head and we allow it to recharge us. We exhale that old stale energy out of our mouths. And as we do, we are then picturing all that clean energy now flowing out of the top of our head, just like a fountain, and it's enveloping us like a bubble. And then we breathe it in again and exhale it out the top. We breathe it in, we inhale through our feet, bring that energy up, and exhale it through the top of our head, creating that resonant energy balloon, okay? Then we go into our affirmations that we are more than our physical body. Now, I did see on YouTube, someone asked on another channel, they said, the affirmation is so long, how do we memorize it? It's difficult. They were saying they were having difficulty memorizing it because when you listen to the first episode or the first tape, Dr. Monroe goes on for quite a long time with that affirmation. And folks, you don't have to remember. You don't have to memorize it. Again, that's not exactly what we're doing with these tapes. For me, I do start out with that very beginning part. I am more than my physical body, right? That's important to remember because we are more than physical matter. But then you can go on from there and really start to say things that are important to you and focus on your mantra, right? You don't have to actually memorize it. Then he walks us into focus 10, again, counting from 1 to 10 as we go through and we get deeper and deeper into these relaxed states, right? And then in tape 4, release, recharge, we deal with our energy conversion box. We deal with the fear that's in our energy conversion box. Remember, we pull it out of the box, we examine it, we let it float away, and then we look at the energy that's left inside and we say, okay, where did this problem come from? How are we going to now heal that, right? And then in tape 5, we have an exploration of sleep. But before we start to explore sleep, Dr. Monroe slips in something very interesting. And that is when we materialize our spirit body for the very first time, right? This is the first time that we feel it starting to bloom outside of our shell, our physical body. Our spirit body starts to bloom out. We're not having an out-of-body experience. We're not detaching. We're not traveling or projecting. None of that yet. We've built up that spiritual body for the first time. We've wiggled it out of our physical body. Again, I've kind of talked about like an insect as they come out of their shell, right? So tape 5, very important. That's that first time you're really going to feel something. And then in tape 6, we bring it back a little bit. We don't have any of those type of feelings. But what we do is we stay in that focus 10, that hypnotic state, right? We stay in the sleep dojo. That's what we've talked about while you're just laying there. You're just kind of seeing the blackness that's the back of your eyelids, right? Your body is starting to fall asleep, but you're still wide awake. And we're able to do things, again, like look through our energy conversion box. This is the sleep dojo. This is our training center. And in tape 6, Dr. Monroe says, hey, you're just here for whatever purpose you're here for. And that's a huge change in the tapes. He's not leading us one step to the next. He's saying, why did you come here? What was your purpose? Is it to manifest something in your life? Is it to visualize something in your life, right? And you can go back to that tape over and over and over again with whatever new purpose that you have, okay? So wave 1 is awesome. It's that introductory course. And in the second half of today's video, we'll get into wave 2. But until then, let's jump back into the book, Journeys Out of the Body by Dr. Robert Monroe. We are working through chapter 11 and 12 today. So chapter 11 is titled Gift or Burden. All right. So again, I'm not going to read a whole lot from here. A lot of what we see in Dr. Monroe's books are basically his dream journals and him trying to decipher what these dreams are. Basically dreams that he's having in locale 2, right? Again, that lucid dreaming like Joe Roop talked about. So again, these books are not dogma. This is not a new religion. We're not trying to, like I said earlier, memorize every single thing that Dr. Robert Monroe says in these books. We are not trying to repeat his experiences. These are his experiences and his alone, okay? You might have ones that are similar, and that's why it's important to read through what he and others like him, others like us. It's good to share our experiences so we know, okay, we are all kind of having the same experiences. What parts are familiar between all of our experiences, our collective experiences with the tapes, right? But that doesn't mean that we're here to try to repeat what Dr. Monroe does, right? So in chapter 11, Gift or Burden, Dr. Monroe talks about again, he doesn't even have, the tapes aren't even created at this point. This is, his notes in this chapter are from 7/5/1959. Okay. That's how long ago he was writing about this stuff, right? This is from 1959. And so he's talking about that as he falls asleep, he starts to, on occasion, see a doorway in front of him. He described it kind of like a circle, and it hinged downwards at like a 45-degree angle. And then he said he could go through that door and be in kind of another world experiencing it. And that's what we've talked about before. So again, let's review real quick. That first stage is our sleep dojo. That's where we can practice new skills, but we're not having any type of out-of-body experience, nothing like that, right? The next step is locale 1. That's when we first start having our out-of-body experiences, and we're traveling here in the real world. We're in our own rooms. We're looking down and seeing our own bodies. We can fly up through our own ceiling and roof and look down at our own cities and travel anywhere we want in our current reality. That's locale 1. And then locale 2, again, is that sleep state. This is the dream-like state. This is the lucid dreaming. This is where now things might be familiar, but they're not quite real, just like a dream, right? You're in a dream and you understand, oh, I'm in a room and this is furniture and those are windows and these are people, but something's off, something's weird. And once you recognize that, you can then start to interact and change things, right? You don't have to just be unconscious to the dream. You're consciously dreaming. And yesterday on that episode of Low Value Mail, a caller called in and he was talking about lucid dreaming, and he said something very interesting. He said one of the ways he knows he's in a dream is that he checks his watch 3 times in a row. And each time when he checks it, the time will be so different that he realizes, oh, this is a dream, right? And he says usually by the 3rd time, he looks at his watch, he looks at the watch face, and he can't even read it anymore. That's a perfect way to check, okay? Maybe not your watch, but your phone, right? If you are in a dream and you think you're in a dream, grab your phone and try to use it. If you can't use it, if the screen is blurry and the buttons are moving, you're in a dream. It's such an easy way to ground yourself and kind of understand where you are and what's happening. And it's funny because when you use enhancements like we've talked about in past videos, right? Those enhancements being THC and psilocybin. Often the psilocybin, when it really starts to get to its peak, it becomes difficult for you to use your phone. Your phone starts to kind of swirl a little bit and it's hard to kind of concentrate and focus on it. And it feels a lot like a dream. And that's an interesting way to think about it, of this combination of how we actually make this dreamlike state happen. So again, Dr. Monroe sees this window and he goes through it and he's in a different world. And again, that sounds like when we go to locale 3. Locale 3 is the void. It's the darkness. It's the abyss. It's the space beyond our universe that we will eventually astral project into. It's, in my opinion, it's where we came from. It's where we're going back to, the darkness, not the light, right? A lot of times we hear about the afterlife, follow the light, right? Light is artificial. Light eventually disappears. It cannot last forever. And when all of the light of the universe is extinguished at some point in history or in our future, we will be left with only darkness. It's where we came from. It's where we're going back to. So when we travel to locale 3, again, we've talked about you can open windows, open portals, and go back in to locale 2, to a dreamlike state, to do whatever you want. Or you can travel back into locale 1, right? You can go back and travel around the world, wherever you want to astral travel. And there's a very interesting difference, right? When you're lucid dreaming, again, when you're listening to the tapes, you're going to know you're lucid dreaming. We have ways of figuring it out now, looking at your phone, things like that. You might come up with your own ways. You know you're lucid dreaming. You know you're still conscious in your dream. But when you're listening to the tapes, you can also just fall asleep. And instead of consciously dreaming, you can, just like you do at night, fall into an unconscious dream where your mind just starts to wander off and you start to have a weird dream. And that's one of, I would say, the most difficult parts of the tapes is staying conscious and staying focused, right? Your mind does just want to wander. You do just kind of want to let go and fall asleep, right? The same way, it's why we watch television and play video games and scroll on our phone, right? We just kind of get to relax and put in an autopilot. But what we're doing here is we're breaking that autopilot. It's why we're reading the books. It's why we listen to the tapes. It's why we focus on, spirituality and whatever rituals that we do that keep us grounded, right? And so, again, you can also, while you're listening to the tapes, just fall asleep into an unconscious dream. We want to avoid that. So I think what Dr. Monroe did here is, again, he was in this locale 3, and maybe he didn't even make it that far, but he just opened a portal into locale 2. He consciously went into a lucid dream. And what he talks about in his notes here is that his dream was him getting onto an airplane. Multiple people got on the plane with him. Everyone was kind of tense when they took off. He felt like they were flying very low, very close to the city, like they were flying almost underneath the telephone wires and stuff. He said it was very strange. And that at the last second, he was able to basically jump out of the airplane somehow, and the airplane crashed. And he realized, oh, okay, this is a dream. This isn't really happening. But what happened is, later on, the next time he had to fly, he got onto a bus that would take him from like a parking garage or whatever to the airport. Again, this was like back in the 60s, right? And so when he got on the bus, he started to realize, oh, this is the dream that I had. I wasn't on an airplane, I was on a bus, because the same people were getting on, wearing the same type of clothes, and everyone just kind of felt tense and everything, right? He said it was the same experience, almost like deja vu. Okay. In my opinion, I've had deja vu multiple times in my life. And in my opinion, I believe that the phenomenon of deja vu is simply you have dreamed about the future at some point in your past, and now you're living through it, right? Whether it's exactly your dream or something like it, a familiarity. And that's what Dr. Monroe says multiple times. He's like, this is very familiar. It seems like I've done this before. So now, in real life, again, he got on the bus, he went to the airport, got on the plane, flew to where he was going, landed perfectly, everything was fine. So that there was never a bus crash or an airplane crash. But what happened a few weeks later is he had a heart attack. And he thinks that in his dream, the airplane crash was kind of a metaphor for his heart attack, right? So he talks about that in chapter 11 here. And then he goes on to read through some of his other notes that haven't occurred yet, right? And again, this was back, I think he wrote this in the 70s or 80s, this book. So who knows if they came true throughout his lifetime. I'll try to follow up and we'll see. But the rest of the chapter was just more of his dream journal. But there was a few things I wanted to read here. It says, honestly, deeply, I deeply feel that it is a transition. And so he's talking about death here. He says it is a transition And much as I will regret the many things that I would never do here, some deep nostalgia, some great longing that I have tried to fulfill in a fumbling way here, I believe will again become actuality if I go home. And he has home in quotes. He's not talking about the home that we live in today. He's talking about the home where our spirit body came from. For more than ever, I believe that the physical body is but a machine for the use of I. And he, again, puts quotes around I. The I is our spiritual body, our spirit, our soul. Therefore, once I have departed, the body should mean nothing. No grave, no vault. The body as such is unimportant. I am not there. Okay. Now, that paragraph alone, for a lot of religions, and I believe a lot of different versions of Christianity, can get people pretty upset, because what do we do with the body? Or I should say, what do Christians do with the body? They embalm them with chemicals, turn them into these plastic wax type figures, bury them in coffins for the hopes that one day their spirit will return to the body and they will be raised from the dead. Yeah, no thanks, right? No thank you. That is not going to happen. That is not how this works, okay? And Dr. Monroe says it in a very honest and heartfelt way here in this paragraph, right? I may say it in a little more harsher tone in future seasons of Mind War when we get deeper into spirituality and religion. I'm sure I'll go off on it a little bit more. Another thing I highlighted here, it says, the mind, when unable to identify truly, picks the nearest thing to it in its mind's experience. So, again, as you go through your lucid dreaming, nothing is ever quite as it seems. You're going to see things in your dreams, and they are going to remind you of something in real life, and then that's kind of it's going to be superimposed over that. You know, if there is a person in your dream, it's not actually the person, right? But they're going to be superimposed over it because they might remind you. It might be a situation or something like that where you say, oh yeah, I was in the situation with that person. That's kind of who this is supposed to represent in my dream, right? So I thought that was interesting. But so that was chapter 11 there. So let's look at chapter 12, round holes and square pegs. It starts out, among the many mysteries encountered, there are several that stand out as being apparently unmotivated yet deeply profound. My only hope is that others more technically or philosophically oriented can perceive in them purpose and reason which I cannot. And again, this is the awesome part about this. This is Dr. Monroe, one man, having these experiences and being brave enough to not only write about them, but then experiment with them and build an entire institute around them, things that he was very afraid, because again, back in the 60s, you're not going to be talking about this stuff. This is a no-go area, because these type of things and experiences even back then would be thought of as evil, right? And again, that religion, that religious blanket that is over our country, it just wouldn't allow us to even look and think about these type of things. So what's awesome is he's talking about in the future, if there are people who are more technically or philosophically oriented, they're going to be able to help understand and decipher kind of what was going on, but more importantly, having our own experiences. And again, that's something that Joe Roop said on the Low Value Male podcast yesterday. He said it's, his only goal and the only reason that he really talks about these things is not to convince people about his experiences. He wants you to have your own. And so do I, folks. Why do you think I'm doing all of this work, coming down here every week, recording these episodes for you? It's not because I'm trying to convince you what I've seen and done. That doesn't matter. I want you to have your own experiences. That's what's important to me. That's what's important to all of us. And then when you have those experiences, the very first, and it's so far what I've seen, the only duty that you really have, the only way that you can really pay back the universe for what you're going to learn through these tapes is by teaching others. That's it. Then you can go do whatever else you want after that and use these tapes in whatever ways you want to and manifest whatever you want in your life, okay? Have fun, have at it. But I think the most important thing is that you have to share with others how we've done it. This is the reverse of secret societies, okay? We're not hiding this information anymore. It's our duty to tell everyone. But like we learned in Mind War Season 1, when we went through the book Mind War, you have to be very careful about propagandizing your friends and family, okay? That was the mistake I made when I first started doing this. I got so excited to share with everyone what I was learning, and I didn't have this platform the way that I do today. So I was sharing it with friends and family who did not like what they were hearing. So maybe don't necessarily share it with those closest to you. Be covert, your own secret agent, right? And you're going to share it with others in your First Earth Battalion, your other small group of people that you're working with that are doing the same thing, right? If you haven't found them yet, leave a comment in the video, find other channels, whether it's YouTube channels, go on Instagram, TikTok, anywhere on social media where people are doing the Gateway Experience tapes. Leave comments there, respond to comments from other people, and start to communicate with them as well, right? Okay, sorry. Chapter 12, Round Holes and Square Pegs. Basically, what Dr. Monroe was talking about here is, again, just several different entries that he put in his journal. So again, we're kind of listening to his dream journal. And it's, we decipher it for what it is. Again, not dogma. These books are not our Bible. We're not trying to recreate the things that he says here. Nothing here is going to, become so important to us that we feel like, oh, if we don't have these experiences, we're not doing it correctly. Nope, that's not what we're talking about, okay? Through these episodes that what the basics are, the very basic things and the tools that we should be learning. Those are the familiar experiences we should all be having. But when it comes to these more kind of esoteric, places that we go to and entities that we may interact with, those are yours and yours alone. These are Dr. Monroe's stories. Again, we're just trying to become familiar with what other people are experiencing. And one of the things he talks about in this chapter, and I didn't really have anything specific to read from it, but he talks about how he was having an out-of-body experience. He was in Locale 2, and he was ready to go back to his body, and he thought he was going back to his body, but he actually kind of ended up in the body of someone who was in a coma. And he realized that he was in a coma when he kind of got back into this body, looked around, realized that he was in a hospital, and he thought to himself, oh, I must still be in the dream. But he was kind of physically hearing and seeing what was going on, and he understood he was paralyzed, that he couldn't move, and it really scared him. There was other people interacting with him in the room. And I don't think he says it specifically, but basically it sounds like he believes that his spirit or his second body went into the body of someone in a coma, and it was kind of scary, and he was able to then get himself out of there and get back to his own body. Again, I've never experienced anything like that. I don't think that that's the type of experiences that you're going to have. I hope that's not what happens, right? Again, these notes are from 1960, okay? Long before the Gateway Experience tapes were ever created. He is still just out here experiencing and experimenting with these techniques by himself, just as he's falling asleep and taking naps. He's counting himself down from 1 to 20. He's not listening to any tapes, nothing like that, okay? So a lot of his stories are almost more Wild West kind of stories where he's in the frontier, right? And he's just experiencing all kinds of wild things. And again, I think a lot of it is he is basically experiencing lucid dreaming and writing his dream journal. Now, when we listen to the Gateway Experience tapes, and because we are going to be so diligent about, wave one, making sure that we understand all of the basics, and as we go through, we're going to learn all the different tools, we're going to practice them, study the tapes, become familiar, become masters of these tapes. The goal and the hope is that we don't run into those type of situations where we get afraid or feel like that we're lost out there or something like that. I've never felt anything like that. It's always been very easy to come and go. I knew where I was going and where I was coming back to. There was never a feeling of being lost or anything like that. In fact, it was the exact opposite. I feel like I was found. I felt more comfort and just feel of safety and love and warmth, right? And happiness. Again, the only feelings that you might say, oh, that was maybe a little scary, is the feeling of like when you're falling, right? Like you're on a roller coaster. Your body is going to exude those same type of chemicals that they would when you're on a roller coaster. So you're going to get that rush of adrenaline and stuff. And at times it's going to feel like your body is falling backwards, right? I mean, that's the scariest thing. And to me, that wasn't scaring at all. It was thrilling. It feels amazing to know that you're lying there in bed, but you're able to have these very physical feelings, while at the same time your spirit body is then leaving that physical body. So that was chapter 11 and 12 in the book Journeys Out of the Body. Again, I'm so proud of all of us. We made it through wave one. Don't forget to check out, like I said at the beginning, the podcast Low Value Mail, hosted by Danny Polachuk. His guest was Joe Roop from Lighting the Void. That's a great episode. And then I would suggest going back and listening to other episodes of Lighting the Void, especially if you want to get more into the esoteric, occult, things like that. Spirituality, that's a great podcast. We reviewed what we did in wave one and all the introductory skills that we learned there, our preparatory process. We did a great job. And when we get back, we're going to dive into wave 2 threshold, tape 1, introduction to focus 12. And we'll talk about that after a word from our sponsor. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's jump right into wave 2 threshold, tape 1, introduction to focus 12. Here's what Dr. Monroe has to say. Well, now that you are indeed on the threshold of a wave of change, it seems like a good idea to bring up a few points of interest, of knowns instead of beliefs or hopes. Okay. First of all, these exercises are only tools for you to learn and use. That's right. These are tools. These are tools that we are learning. It's very interesting because it's not the same type of knowledge that you might use on a job site or something like that in your career. These are different types of tools. These are tools that are maybe, parallel to self-help. Again, I've described what we're doing here as a way to do self-help. Maybe parallel with, therapy and things like that. It's also parallel to spirituality and those type of things. And it's parallel to the mysteries like we talked about early from the secret societies, right? These are simply tools. These are spiritual, mental tools that we're learning. As such, they do not create change in you. Nothing that you're going to find in this book, nothing that you're going to find in the tape is going to create change in your life. The only thing that's going to create change in your life is you. There is no manifestation without imagination, but there is also no manifestation without putting in the work. You have to do the work. That's the most important thing that I've learned through my practice of all of this over the last 2.5 years and all the things that I've learned through my life. Nothing is going to just manifest in front of you. You have to put in the work to build it and make it happen. And that's what Dr. Monroe is telling you here. Only you can change you. No one outside of you, no one external of you, no family, friends, therapists, doctors, no pills, nothing like that, no seminars, none of that's going to change you. You have to change you. With these tools, you can affect many changes all under your control. What changes you make are up to you, entirely your own decision and no one else. Who else talks to you like this in your life? Nobody. You don't hear this from people anymore, right? Only you can change you, and the tools, they can affect many changes under your control. You control the changes in your life by using these tools. No one rise. No one is as capable as you in making decisions that deeply affect you. No one is as capable as you in making decisions that deeply affect you. Again, who tells you that? Everyone nowadays is telling you you have to look externally for your answers. That is a lie. You are the most capable person of making decisions in your life. Because no one, absolutely no one, knows you better than you. I hope you're your best friend, folks. I really do. It might take some time. A lot of us throughout our lives, we spend our time hating ourselves. No more. We are going to learn how to be our own best friends. That's the best way to start, man. Your life changes after that. At this point, you probably believe or hope that you truly are more than your physical body, and you will experience that. The interesting question is, how much more are you? Whatever you believe, consider the possibility that the more is far greater than you've ever imagined or dreamed. So that's a good feeling. That's a great thing to think about. Is once you even start to be open to the idea that we're more than our physical body, that there's something truly spiritual about us, that's an awesome feeling. And you say, man, that's really cool. That's a really cool thing. And he's saying, man, if you think it's cool, guess what? It's 100, 1,000,000, and infinite times awesomer than you can even imagine. So you can use these exercise tools to reduce such beliefs into knowns. So now, again, we can start to experience what it means to be more than our physical body. Use them, and you're on the threshold of knowing you are more and how much greater you are than mere physical matter. Someone can tell you, and you can read about it, and you can believe it, but that's not enough. I've told you that when we work through the Gateway Experience tapes, and in future seasons of Mind War, when we start to apply them to our spiritual practices, you will experience your religion for the first time. No longer will you be sitting in a pew somewhere, having someone else explain or describe to you something that they know nothing about. It's just like we were talking about earlier with the secret societies. We had all these guys go in and say, hey, what are the secrets? What's going on? And the guys that were in those buildings had no idea what they were talking about. What are the real mysteries? Well, we're figuring them out, right? It's not a mystery anymore. This isn't a secret society anymore. We're releasing these teachings. The only way is to find out for yourself. Again, just like Joe said, I'm not here to convince you of my experiences. I want you to have your own. Then you will know. You will have at least a suspicion. And that's what produces the changes. That's right. It's these simple things where you start to have, again, those unknowns or those beliefs of like, oh, it would be cool if we really did have a spirit, that would be awesome. That's your belief. They want you to believe that, right? That's what they tell you in your religious books, to believe. But they don't tell you how to experience it. Because once you experience it and know, now the changes come. Use and practice these exercises. They can help you do this as they have for many before you. And he says, well, that's enough. Let's get started on the action. Okay. I think that was a great way for Dr. Monroe to open up wave 2. I think some of it was maybe to cover his own ass, right? He's basically, I think in some ways saying, listen, man, I'm not hypnotizing you and then brainwashing you in these tapes. And I know that there are people, because again, I've listened to countless podcasts and videos talk about the tapes, people who've never listened to them. And one of their big fears is that it's, brainwashing. You're going to get brainwashed into doing this or that. That's not what it is. Okay. Just like I've told you, I'm not here to push any type of spirituality or belief system on you. Okay. What I'm here to do is try to share with you the tools that I've learned so that you can experience the spirituality that you want. Experience whatever religion you may follow. I have experienced things in my spiritual practices that make them real. Okay? They're real to me. They're real in my way. And it's amazing. And I'm so excited to share it with you as we go through this. So next he says, move now into your preparatory process. First, your energy conversion box, then the resonant tuning, then your resonant energy balloon, and then your affirmation. We are more than our physical body. And then go into focus 10, and I will join you there. Again, remember I've talked about this. I mean, from now on out, he's not going to walk us through that preparatory process anymore. He's going to remind us to do it, and then the sounds are going to dictate what we're doing. You're going to know when it's time to do your resonant tuning because you're going to hear other people doing the tuning along with you. And when that dies down, the sound changes completely, and now you know it's time to build your resonant energy balloon. The sounds that he uses feel like the sound is moving through your body from your feet to your head, right? And then now you're going to, again, do that breathing and imagine it happening. Okay, and he says, now, from focus 10, you're going to learn to move to a different state of consciousness or conscious awareness. That state is called focus 12. Focus 12, where your consciousness has moved far beyond the limits of your physical body, far beyond this. The limits of physical awareness, where you can perceive and understand in ways far beyond the limitations of physical matter, okay? He says to reach focus 12, all you need to do is count slowly in your mind from 10 to 12. And when you reach the count of 12, you will be in focus 12, where your awareness is expanded far beyond the limits of the physical body, far beyond the limits of physical matter. I will guide you now in this movement from 10 to 12. And then he starts counting, right? 11. Your awareness is expanding more and more. Your awareness is expanding more and more, far beyond the limits of the physical body, more and more. Reaching outward, your consciousness and perceptions are reaching outward more and more, far beyond the limits of your physical body. And then he says 12, now you're in focus 12, the state of expanded awareness. Of awareness far beyond the limits of the physical body. Focus 12, relax now, relax and explore. Explore these far reaches of your awareness. Begin your exploration of focus 12. Okay. So, for me, here's what I was experiencing a few days ago when I listened to tape 2-1. All right. So, for the last couple of weeks, since the spring has sprung, I've been out doing some landscaping here at the Mind War Estates, right? There's a lot of work to do outside, and your old buddy Victor here, I'm an old man, right? So out there doing that type of physical labor has really been exhausting. So the other day I came in from a hard day's work outside, and I was like, okay, I am in a lot of pain today. I was very sore. And so I decided to use some of the THC and psilocybin as kind of a pain relief. And this is something that I don't normally do. I might use THC for that, right? But the psilocybin, I usually just focus it when I'm listening to the tapes or doing my spiritual practices, right? But this night I was like, I really am in a lot of pain and I think that's going to help. And so I decided if I'm going to do that, I want to listen to the tape at the same time. Now, I take very low dose when I do it. And this particular dose was a third of what I normally do. So it was a very, very low dose, right? But it was still enough to really help, enhance the tapes and get me into the state of being that I needed to be. So, with that being said, I think there were still some limitations when I was listening to the tapes this night, because even with the enhancements and listening to the tapes and everything and being in my nice warm bed, all clean after a hard day's work, I was, again, still in some pain. And that really kept me grounded to my body, right? But I don't think this tape here, tape 2-1, is again, trying to get us into an out-of-body state or anything like that. I don't think that that's what this is about. And the reason is because of one of the words that he uses. And this, again, the way he created these tapes and the way he talks to us, it directs us into these feelings because he talks about our conscious awareness, right? He's not talking about our second state, our spirit body, nothing like that. He's specifically talking about our awareness and our perception, right? And that's what this tape is. So when you get into Focus 12, what he does is, again, we've talked about the different sounds that he uses during the tapes. And so in this tape, once you get into Focus 12, and you're now going to have your perception and your awareness move away from your physical body. He uses the sound of a rocket ship, and it starts in the lower left, corner of your hearing. You hear it taking off over here, and it rises through. You can hear the space shuttle, taking off this rocket ship. And as it's going, it crosses, because, you're listening through your headphones, it crosses your mind and then shoots off into space on the right side. So you hear it starting in your left and then it disappears off into the distance in your right ear. And what it does is it pulls your awareness with it. It pulls your perception with it. This is what I talked about in tape 1-5, where you're being stretched. Your spirit body is being stretched out of the physical body. Well, what Dr. Monroe is doing with these sounds is he's stretching our awareness, our perception out. And like we talked about before, what is that perception? In our physical world, the majority of our lifetime, our perception is coming from our eyeballs, right? Now, we perceive with all of our other senses as well, but our eyes are very particular when it comes to our awareness and our perception. We perceive in front of us. We are aware of the things that are in front of us. Again, we've talked about, like the cartoon X-Men, Cyclops, he shoots the lasers out of his eyes, or, Superman shoots the lasers out of his eyes. You can think of that as your perception and your awareness when you are in your physical body using your eyeballs, right? But what happens when your second body, when your spirit body begins to exit the physical body, you're no longer trapped by the limitations of your physical eyeballs. You can now begin to be aware and perceive all around you in all directions. It's not necessarily at the same time. It's not like an omnipresent type thing, but it's more you're able to look and move all around the spirit body, and you're not limited by the physical eyeballs and the skeletal structure, and as far as we can move and things like that, you're able to see everywhere. And so I was trying to think, how do I explain this feeling? What is kind of an analogy or something, right? And the best I could come up with is if you're looking at a cartoon, like a comic strip or just a regular comic, or maybe a poster or a meme or something, right? And you see a person there and they have a thought bubble next to their head. And in the thought bubble, there's words or maybe another image or something like that. And it shows like, oh, the character is thinking about what's in the thought bubble. That's what it felt like. Your perception and your thought process and your awareness is no longer in your physical body, but instead it was being pulled out over here. I felt like my perception was just kind of floating in this area. I knew I was still connected to my physical body, but it was just a little bit outside of it, right? And it kind of reminded me of like, say you're doing some mundane task, right? You're washing the dishes, right? And just one dish after another, and you're staring off into space like we do, right? And we're thinking about something totally different than what we're doing. And we're just like, yep, we're washing the dishes. And then all of a sudden someone comes up and taps us on the shoulder and is like, hey. And then what do? Oh, we're startled. Oh, hey, how's it going? What's up, right? That's a lot what it felt like. It's that same type of thought where when you're doing that, it's almost like you're no longer even in your physical body. Yeah, your physical body is down there bored, doing the dishes one after another, doing whatever mundane task you're doing, where the muscle memory just takes over and you don't even really have to think about what you're doing. But your mind is off thinking about other things. It's floating up here in the etheric, whatever, right? It's floating up here in the space around us, thinking about other things. And it's like, and you hear people say, hey, where were you at? It's like, well, I was right here. Well, your thoughts were 1,000,000 miles away, right? That's kind of it. Just one of the best ways I could describe it. And again, it was a very good feeling. There was a physical feeling that you're going to have with this tape. Again, it's not a full out-of-body experience. I didn't even really feel the second body being materialized, right? That was in tape 1-5, and we're going to feel it again in future tapes, but I didn't necessarily feel that in this tape. Again, it may be some of the pain that I was in. It was grounding me. But really, I think the focus and the goal and the purpose of tape 2-1 is to get your awareness outside of your physical body. to understand what it means to think and perceive outside of your physical body, right? Okay, and he says, you're in the state of expanded awareness. That's a perfect example. You're expanding your awareness beyond the limits of our physical body. We're going to relax, right? Now in focus 12, he moves you back to 10, right? We're going to see that over and over again where he walks us back and forth. And now you will go back into focus 12. He walks us back into focus 12. The state of expanded awareness, expanding outside the limits of our physical body. He says, if at any point from this moment on, if you desire again to be in focus 12, all you need to do is move from focus 10 to focus 12, is to count in your mind from 10 to 12, and then you will be in focus 12. The more you perform this method of reaching focus 12 from focus 10, the easier it will be. So again, we've talked about all the different tools that we learned. You don't necessarily even have to be listening to the tapes, but as you're falling asleep, you can count yourself from 1 to 10. It's going to help you, or 1 to 20, I think we learned. It's going to help you get into a deeper sleep, right? Once you get into focus 12 or 10, you just keep going. 11, 12, now you get into focus 12. And it's that practice. I really think that practicing this with the tapes is the best way to do it, right? But even for myself, when I'm having difficulty falling asleep, or if I'm trying to take a nap in the afternoon or something, and I'm not listening to the tapes, I'll just count from 1 to 10 in my head, and that usually helps calm me down, take a few deep breaths, right? So again, relax, feel calm and comfortable in focus 10. He lets you relax a little bit. He reminds us of our affirmation that we are more than our physical bodies because we are more than physical matter. I think he goes through the entire affirmation there. He tells us that when we return to physical conscious waking state, our body will be equalized and overcome all the things that might hinder or prevent it from being or giving its best mental, spiritual, and physical self. Healing the mind, body, and spirit. Remember, that's what we're doing here. And that's why at the end of every tape, as he's waking us up, he's going to go through this over and over and over again and saying, when you wake up, you're going to be healthy, revitalized, energized. Your body's going to be functioning perfectly. It might sound silly when you first listen to it, but again, it's so important to tell ourselves these things because, like I said before, we are going to be our best friends. We are going to be our own cheerleaders, and we do it with this affirmations, over and over again. We hear these positive things and we remind ourselves that we are healthy, happy, successful, right? And that we are working towards our Aristos. Perfectly normal. He says you will now return to full physical waking health by the method that you have learned, by saying the number 1 in your mind. And then he wakes you up. He says, do it now. So that was tape 2-1. So wave 2 is titled Threshold. Tape 1, Introduction to Focus 12. We've now learned Focus 12, and it keeps going. That number just keeps rising and rising as we go through the tapes. Remember, tape 2-1, we've started a new wave. This is about expanding our awareness outside of our physical body. Not necessarily our second state body, not necessarily our spiritual body. We're not having an out-of-body experience with this tape. That's not the purpose. That's not the goal. The purpose is to simply expand our awareness, expand our perception, and realize that once we do leave our bodies, that we can, number 1, think and have conscious thoughts outside of the body, and number 2, that we can perceive and look and move where we need to go, expanding that awareness outside of the physical body. So, Again, folks, I'm really proud of us. We made it through wave 1. Today, in today's episode, we started wave 2. This is awesome. We're making it through journeys out of the body, right? We did chapters 11 and 12 today. We're making real progress here, folks. This is really great. And I appreciate all of you out there that are watching. I see the numbers out there. They're growing with every episode. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate that so much. And remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.